So, last week I did a LinkedIn post about quiet quitting.
Mm-hmm.
I'd seen the hashtag quiet quitting a fair bit over LinkedIn and I had no idea what it meant. To be totally blunt with you, I thought quiet quitting was where you quietly exited out of the business, which I was quite curious, how do you do that?
Yeah.
But it's not at all. Vix, would you like to explain what quiet quitting is?
I think from what I've read, there's been loads of stuff in kind of media about it. And I actually think that's a problem in itself. I think there's lots of different definitions. But from my understanding, it was started in America by a guy on kind of TikTok who suggested that quiet quitting is, I guess, pretty much doing your day job and not going over and above what's expected of you. Is that what you understand?
Yeah, I think it's doing what's in your contract.
Yeah.
Nothing more, nothing less.
Yeah.
But just that's it. And it is as class as the bare minimum. And it's kind of like, I think it's sparked a load of controversy over, I think it's like, it sparks controversy over the different generations and attitudes towards work.
Yeah, because I think there's loads of negative connotations around it, because quiet sounds a bit sneaky and quitting's like...
It's not a good name.
Yeah, it's like you want to get out of it.
Yeah.
So I think really if it just means doing your job and not over and above, there should be different kind of terminology for it.
Mm-hmm.
But I think... Yeah, definitely of my generation, I'm in my 40s. When I first heard about it, my first thought, I'm not a quiet quitter. Like, I would never do something like that. And, I would always hope I would do over and above what was asked of me. So it put panic in me in case someone had labelled me as like a quiet quitter. But actually, the more I read about it, the more I understood, I had the wrong definition of what it was to begin with.
Okay.
What's kind of your 20s, but what does your generation think?
So I'm 29 and I think I do think it's our generation. I think it's our movement and our idea about work and work-life balance.
Yeah.
And I think it's making sure that we make work and not make work our life. And I think that's a very common kind of ethos in our generation, really. And I'm an advocate for it. I hate the term quiet quitting. I think it sounds like you're doing the bare minimum. I think it sounds really negative.
It does.
But I think doing what's in your contract and what's been agreed, I think is fine.
Yeah.
As long as you're doing it well and you're doing that to the best of your ability, I don't see a problem with that. And I know, for instance, from when I was a teacher in my past life, I was a primary school teacher, you physically couldn't do the job that you're paid to do and contracted to do in your working hours. You had to do unpaid work in order to do the job. And I refused. That was like a real sticking point for me. I refused to do a job which impacted on my social life, and that was one of the main reasons I quit teaching, because I wouldn't do work that impacted on that. I think social life, you work to have a social life, right?
Yeah.
And I don't work to work in my social life.
Yeah, and I think that'll resonate with loads. I'm friends with a lot of teachers, and I think that'll resonate a lot with them. There's no way they could, if they didn't go above and beyond what they do, that they would be able to deliver their job. So actually, it's more going back to the kind of job description and job role as to what's expected of you. And maybe it's quiet. I think the only thing that means it's quiet is that whoever kind of wrote that job spec, there's a quietness around what's expected of you as opposed to you being quiet. It's more like the kind of person who's written that job is being quiet actually about everything that it includes. Maybe not intentionally, but there's definitely a lot of expectations. And I've got a few friends who work in agencies as well. And I remember someone saying that, if she didn't stay to continue her job at an agency, past like 6-7 o'clock, she knew a junior would just come in and replace her. So even though she did her job to the best of her ability, if she didn't exceed those couple of hours, it would go against her. And she knew there was someone just waiting to get in that role, a young junior. She'd had a family at the time, so she had to leave at 5-6 to pick that child up. And I think, especially in agencies, it isn't just the agency world, but especially with the agencies, there's an expectation that you'll stay on until 7-8 to get the job done, especially if you're managing international accounts where you need to be on different time zones. But definitely in the agency world, from what I've picked up, there is that expectation that you'll go above and beyond. So yeah,
and I thought as well, when you were sort of talking about the word quiet in that as well, I think, when you look at the opposite, which is loud, it's kind of, it promotes that kind of mentality in the workplace that if I'm going to get promotion, if I'm going to get pay rise, if I'm going to be recognised, I have to be loud about the amount of work I'm doing. And I can only speak from teaching, because coming in freelance and working solo, and then working alongside you recently, I've not been able to hear these discussions within digital marketing. You've got that experience, but in terms of teaching, gosh, there's so much. Oh, I was up till 8-9 o'clock last night, marking this, and people so loud about how much extra work they're doing in order to be recognised.
Yes, and there's something fundamentally wrong with that, isn't there? Because it's like you say, I think it's definitely of your generation, and I wish we had been more like that, and I'm generalising here, you are more focused on the ethos of that company, the culture, and your own well-being, and there's nothing wrong with that. Whereas I do think ours was more focused on, you do as much as you can and you stay behind to get the job done, and there's an element of guilt if you don't do that. But I think with the pandemic and everything, it's opened up, and obviously the grand resignation and all these kind of buzzwords that you hear, definitely, and I speak for myself as well, have had a rethink in your work-life balance. And it still makes me nervous to say, I'd be a quiet quitter. But actually, if the definition of that is just doing your job and doing it well, what is the problem with that?
And on that note, I think especially with us being freelance, the fact that when we work with a client, it's a two-way street to come up with a contract. We stipulate in that contract, I will do X, Y, and Z for you each month. We make sure both parties are happy with that. So why would there be any room for doing more for no work, for no pay, sorry. Why would we go outside of that boundary? As long as you're doing that to a high level and you're making sure when you do those things that you stipulated really well, why would you need to do anything more? And I think it's almost easier maybe for being self-employed, because you've multiple clients. Well, with us, we've multiple clients. And we cannot let one client dominate more than another. It's not fair. You've got to have the time that you have. The things that you've said that you'll do in the contract. You can't favour one client or do more for one client than another.
That's right. And you've got to remain flexible. Because you might give the client a set amount of hours or a set amount of days per week. That client might not always be available on the days that you're available. So you do always bend slightly to accommodate them and to keep both parties happy. But definitely, I think, as you brought up in the world of freelancing, there is this natural kind of culture or inner you to over deliver, to go to bed and check that everything's on track to read your phone, because I'm sure it goes on in people in non-freelancer roles, but you can almost switch off and go, I'll get that done in the morning. Whereas with freelancing, sometimes you can't get that done in the morning because you're with another client the next few days, and that's where that overspill comes from. So I think that comes with experience as well, knowing what you can do within those set hours, but it doesn't always work out that way.
No, but then I wouldn't say that's quite quitting, to go over your hours, because if you needed to go over your hours to fulfill that contractual thing, then you've got to do it.
Yeah, so then you should probably be billing for those hours, But a lot of freelancers, I'm pretty sure, don't. They just do it because they need to get it off their to-do list. They feel accountable because they want to do the best they can by their clients.
Yeah.
But also, there's definitely that thing where you feel, oh, I feel a bit cheeky billing them for this because they haven't asked you. That's exactly what we're hitting on. It's like a non-verbal agreement, isn't it? They haven't asked you to over-deliver. You're over-delivering because you want to do a good job.
Yeah.
And especially with your kind of expert skills in kind of social media, you can't wait till tomorrow and the next day, because with social, things have to be done on a certain day. So it's not like you can, oh, well, that can wait till tomorrow. Sometimes it can't. It has to go out that day or that week.
Very time precious.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we'll quit there with the quiet quitting. Oh God. But we'd love to hear your point of view on quiet quitting.
Yeah.
So please let us know in the comments if you have your own viewpoint on it. I think we have generalised a bit. I know that I've sort of talked about, making it general, like an age thing, brought age into it.
Yeah.
But I have friends who definitely don't quiet quit and they're my age. So it might be an industry thing. We'd love to hear from you anyway.
Yeah.
What's this? This next one then is called, so you came across this next term today.
I did, and it was called quiet firing.
Yeah, which doesn't have the same ring. I was saying it should be called silent sacking, to go with the alliteration.
Definitely. Well, I think what is the understanding of quiet firing? Because now it makes me suspicious because quiet quitting isn't quite what it seems.
Well, quiet firing is kind of different. It kind of, I think the words quiet firing make it sound like it actually is, whereas quiet quitting, I think, doesn't sound like
it's
its definition.
Passive, isn't it? Yeah.
Quiet firing, from what I understand, is when an employer basically tries to get rid of a member of staff, like subtly, like discreetly, without actually saying you're fired. They basically make the worker's life hell to make them quit.
Wow.
I know, that's so
it's
hard.
actually like a strategic thing to push someone out.
I've seen this before.
Yes, I've witnessed it too,
Oh,
actually.
Really?
Yeah, I didn't know it was called quiet firing, but
No.
I've definitely witnessed it. But then I would not be all for a company that had that in its culture, or a leader who was using those tactics, because I think there's more effective ways. Where have you kind of seen it in the teaching world?
I've seen it in the teaching world.
Have you?
Because it's very difficult to fire a teacher. So obviously you've got a lot of union support. However, when I was you don't have as much support when you're in private education. I'm not saying it's private or public sector, but I have seen somebody basically have a lot put on them, lots of deadlines to meet, when they knew they were already in a, unstable mental health area, which is probably why they weren't doing the job very effectively. And so they put the pressure on, they put the deadlines on, they put the extra responsibility on them to make them cave. But they had to be very subtle about it they had to be careful about it because they were concerned that person would then go off with stress, which then would then mean they had to pay them for being off ill. So I think in the teaching world it's very high to sack a teacher, and I think that possibly is used a lot in teaching. What about in digital marketing?
Yeah, I think going back to when I speak about digital marketing, there's so many incredible freelancers out there, and there's a huge community, and I think, not to give them a plug, but that's been brought out by Freelancer magazine and by Sophie Cross. I think there's been this rise of freelancers and all these kind of problems cropping up, and a community where people can speak and chat. I think again with agencies, not from direct experience, but from speaking with my friends who worked for some really, successful and high-end agencies, that has definitely been a case. And I think you start to open up all sorts of, it's like opening a can of worms. Then you get into, are these people being kind of quietly sacked or quietly fired because of their race, because of their gender, so it starts opening up a lot more kind of conversations around, you know, such topical issues, really.
Is that what you've experienced then, you think? It's been like bias in the workplace?
But yes, a bias towards, I've had direct experience through my friends through, bias towards ethnicity, and especially through females of a kind of ethnic minority who have got to board leadership level and have found this quiet firing or ways going around it. And I think it definitely exists. So, you know, if anyone's been experienced by it or has a friend of a friend who's experienced it, we'd like to hear about it.
Yeah, definitely.
But I think in kind of the industry of digital marketing, it probably goes on in every industry at some level.
So I've got a question for you. Yeah. Do you think you've ever been quietly fired?
I don't, but maybe I'm naive. I don't. But again, perhaps it was so quiet I didn't notice.
It was so silent.
It was so silent. Silent but deadly.
Yeah.
I think, but I haven't. Do you feel you have?
No, I don't think I have.
I think there's two things here. I think you can get muddled up with quiet quitting and imposter syndrome in a way where you are, people might perceive you or as quietly quitting now that terminology's come out, or you've actually got imposter syndrome and you might not be performing to your best, because that's a whole nother podcast, but
yeah, we need to do that.
You know, they all relate to each other, and you can actually bring in that whole triangle of quietly firing, imposter syndrome, and quietly quitting into this triangle, because they all are kind of interdependent to one another, and one affects the other. So I guess it's just looking at, well, who kind of started it, where did it come from? But I do think with these words, you know, imposter, quietly, they have very negative connotations. And I've seen a thing in the media today actually where they called quiet quitting, the opposite to that would be loudly persisting, and they are the kind of, that's the terminology we should be referring to. It's about speaking with your leaders and your managers about your expectations, and
boundaries.
There's all, it's setting boundaries.
You know,
that's all it
that's
is.
Another
Boundary
podcast
setting
as well. Boundary setting in the workplace.
Yeah.
Oh my word.
Yes. Especially, and I'm sure there's hundreds of industries out there who'd feel the same, but I can only speak from my experience in the world of freelance. There has to be boundaries.
Do you know what? Let's leave it there, and I think the next maybe a couple of podcasts after this we need to talk about imposter syndrome.
Yeah.
And what was the other
Boundary
one?
setting.
The wine has gone to me.
Cheers.
Cheers.
I really enjoyed that.
God, we were on fire.
I'm sure no one